Hello, and welcome back to Sharing a Chapter a Day. This is Me, and today I will be reading Chapter 71 of Engagement in Peril by Dara Odoe. Chapter 71 is titled Promiscuity. West Coast Nightcap. There was a delightful girl there in Newport that I met while on medical hold. Her name was Aileen. She was also withdrawn and booted out from the boost program, just like myself. She was let go as a result of her own desire to get out. She later told me that she couldn't handle the stress and the daily routines of following directions of military life, taking orders and instruction from people who she had to take orders from. Aileen was only 19 then at the time, and I had just turned 21 that past summer. Aileen had been picked up by the boost program straight out of high school for the line officer corps. Unlike the majority of candidates there at Boost who were to be line officer, upon graduation, she would later go on to be an officer on a ship or an aircraft carrier in charge of various enlisted personnel and such, the management type. Eileen was a military brat who was in the Navy ROTC program during her high school days back in San Francisco, California. So to come up with a plan to be withdrawn from the Boost program, Aileen schemed and had a friend hit her with a car. As a result, a terrible outcome came of it. Both her knees were shattered and mutilated. Her story was funny at times when she tells it to me. Then again, it is also a little sad because she had damaged and scarred herself physically and mentally for life. And I'm sure she was crushed psychologically as well in some form from her premeditated freak accident. While being held on medical hold together, several times we were assigned to work at various jobs together where we would mop, sweep, and pick up leaves and trash on and about and around the Naval Command. We began to form a friendship from there, and eventually our friendship led to something more. While off duty and during my spare time on base, I'd sometimes go watch television at Aileen's dorm room several blocks away from my lonesome concrete building. And we would just hang out, cracking jokes, looking at old pictures, and talking about past and old times we shared with friends and family back in California. Just like the sort of things that old friends do. Shooting the breeze and spitting into the wind. But we had just gotten acquainted. Anyhow, it was nice to have someone to talk to and someone to bear some of my daily frustration and burden with. Aileen was delightful to be with then. She was there to listen to my worries and anguish, and that's what I appreciated about her, her sincere, warm friendship. She was someone I could confide in then. She was the light to be with. She had been on medical hold for about 14 months now, and once we got to know each other in more depth, she opened up to me more about her situation. And she had been assigned to the unit several classes before mine, and now she just waits to be shipped home. Unfortunately for her, she had to wait until her knees were reconstructed and was healed. So in the meantime, she was stuck there, just like the rest of us who were deemed as medical hold personnel and waited until we were medically discharged by the higher powers of military authorities. I felt sorry for Aline then, being held there for so long now, and there I was, just a few months into and under medical holding, and I was bitching like a little girl. Damn, I was pathetic then. I'm surprised that Aileen didn't put me in my place then and there. She had the right to. She could have just put me in my place. I guess she knew I was depressed then, and that I was fucked up in the head somewhat. Aileen was from San Francisco and seemed eager to get back home as soon as possible, but her legs had to be healed first before the Navy sends her home. During one of my visits to her room, she showed me some of her old pictures with her friends and with colleagues back in San Francisco. Now, Aileen looked damn good then in those pictures. Aileen and her friends back in San Francisco were an attractive bunch with lovely smiles and tempting physiques. They all dressed up in dark, tight clothing that snugly held them, revealing all the good essential that God had bestowed upon them. Their firm bosom, their hourglass figure, with multiple childbearing hips, and those delicate, symmetric porcelain faces stood out. Unfortunately for Eileen then, since she had been immobilized from her fraudulent freak accident, she had put on about 30 extra pounds or so. So her one fine-ass physique was now a little chunkier. So she was a little thicker than before, but still attractive enough to be thought about sexually though. And you know me, the fucked of me, I'm not too picky when it comes to doing the nasty thing with the opposite sex. You were quite sick in the head then, Dara, and so lonely then. You were all horned up and ready to fuck anything that moves your way. I should have told you to calm your ass down and take it slow then. But then again, you weren't listening to anyone who tried to help you, you son of a bitch. Crazy thing about Aileen, her father was a naval officer, but she didn't want any help from her daddy. She wanted to get over this hump all on her own. The cool thing about working with Aileen was that I always had a ride in a vehicle instead of walking to work where I had to track and hike all over base on my own 2 feet back then. During that time, our command had issued Aileen her own golf cart to drive around base because of her busted knees and due to the fact that she needed to take it easy on her legs and body. It was part of her physical therapy then. Light duty and less weight on her feet. Now, at various work duty stations, we usually did the light work. Well, she usually did the light work. No heavy lifting or such while I got all the heavy and shitty jobs to do. But it worked out for the both of us. Because Aileen was there to cheer me on and encourage me on. And we got to spend time together. And that's what I wanted. She was the only real close friend that I had there that I can personally talk to. And she was the only one I had there to comfort me during my desolate times in this mundane life of Newport, Rhode Island. Being with and often seeing Eileen during after work and on my free time gave us the opportunities to build and become closer to one another. I sometimes stayed past curfew at her place on campus, no, on base, chilling and such, watching movies and listening to music together. And at times we find ourselves closer to each other. We were we were quite friendly then to each other at various times, the sort of stuff people do when they are somewhat attracted to each other. A hug here or there, a kiss here or there, quick pecks and such. Nothing too harsh or too extreme. And we seemed to really enjoy each other's company all the same. There was a time when Eileen and I were intimate. On one Saturday evening, we had dinner and a little too much red wine together at her dorm room. And maybe, just maybe, perhaps, the alcohol we had consumed got the best of both of us then. We were sexually intimate that night. Well, actually, we fucked our brains out. I'm sure we weren't really that drunk, but the alcohol played its role in loosening us up to getting us involved sexually and being freakishly sinful with one another throughout that memorable, sinful, festive night. You scored nicely then, Dara. Food, wine, and sex? Damn! I envy you. All three goes well together. You were one lucky son of a bitch then, you son of a bitch. Asshole. I hope Eileen remembered those moments you two shared together, that enjoyable, lustful night. You were being yourself then. Are you listening? You were being yourself then, Dara, and Eileen let you into her heart and her body. See how attractive you can be if you really put your mind to it? As I tell myself about my past deeds. I felt fortunate that night. We ordered delivered food from a nearby Italian bistro, which was nicely prepared. Once the food was delivered, paid for, and tip given to the man who delivered the food, we went on our merry way to enjoy the lovely dinner together that night. And for dinner, we had pasta with meat sauce, garlic bread, hot wings, and several small personal-sized salad with Italian dressing. A lot of carbohydrate was consumed that night, and for dessert, we had cherry pie, which was topped off with white creamy Cool Whip that Aileen had in her fridge. During and after dinner, we shared a bottle of red wine that Aileen had stashed in one of her kitchen's cabinet. The red wine eventually loosened us up and led us to throw our inhibition out the window that led us to shacking up rottenly there and then, right after our Italian feast was consumed and digested that night. While drinking, we were slightly dazed. Of course, I was more inhibited than Eileen was, and with our individual wine glass in our in our hand after eating, we made our way to the couch where we sat and cozy up side by side, with soft music resonating throughout the room, giving us a sense of romanticism. We slowly made eye contact and began to softly kiss each other on the lips, where we giggled at various intervals at what we were doing to each other. We made small talk about this and that, general shit. After finishing our wine, we set the glasses aside, stood up, and hugged each other warmly. She leaned toward me with her larger body pressed upon mine, causing me to lose my balance and catapulted the both of us onto the nearby couch. With embarrassment and laughter, our lips touched and pressed deeper into each other, and we slowly made out uncomfortably on the couch. Our liquored up, warm bodies touched gently, pressed against one another, while we slowly swayed back and forth to the soft music that serenaded our accidental special moment then. While our soft kisses got more passionate and more forceful, my body quickly warmed up, and the blood from my brain shifted its direction toward my infertile penis and quickly awakened and stiffened its devilish demeanor. Elaine too had awakened the sleeping giant, just like that time Tilly had done a little over a year back at the male BEQ back at the Naval Medical Center in San Diego. While Elaine passionately went at you like that, she hoped to bring back memories of that delightful blowjob that Tilly had given you when you both shared that nice, cozy night together, as her gift of you not taking advantage of her during that fragile state that she was in then. Being right under Eileen, where her warm body waited atop and consumed my upper torso, I could feel that her bosom had swelled up, hardened, and was firmly pressed against my rated body. We continued to deeply kiss, where our tongue crashed and collided against one another, sucking and licking at each other's mouth and face as though we were each other's second meal. We both gulped down, sucking in and out of each other's face and firmly holding each other during our makeout session then. We were both enjoying what was happening then. We were both getting really turned on, and I felt that we were ready to move further. With my hands crawling up and under Eileen's blouse, making its way toward her bra strap from behind, she gently dragged her left hand toward the front of my loose-fitted jean. I flicked away the first snap of her lace bra, and simultaneously Eileen unloosened my belt, and after I snapped off the second latch, she loosened the button and unzipped my denim jeans. And after I retracted the last strap on her lace bra, she quickly yanked down my jeans, where her C-plus bosom dangled and flopped back and forth against her loosened blouse as she quickly motioned, pulled, and guided my jeans away from my legs. Once my jeans were away from my body, she moved back to my midsection and straddled my tan flush body with her chubby, long, firm legs. Slowly and provocatively, she pulled up her loosened blouse while teasing me with her firm bosom that slightly revealed itself as she slowly moved the blouse up and away from her. With both her arms raised and busy with her blouse above her head, I hurriedly lifted my upper torso and launched my thirsty mouth onto her warm, eager, large bosoms. With each of my hands grasping at her bosom, positioning it in place, I moved back and forth with my head as I buried my mouth onto and into each warm, juicy, jiggling jugs. I was slobbering all over her delicate bosom then, drooling all over her porcelain body and eating away at her ripe cherries and mammaries. Before she could throw off her blouse, she moaned slightly while I bit into the flesh of her tasteful, peachy bare bosoms. After releasing her blouse, Aileen, with both her hands freed, she grasped the back of my head and pulled me into her, burying my entire face between her warm valley as she swayed my head left and right, arousing me more and more, while her body quivered and warmly swayed side to side in blissful delight as I sucked and squeezed upon her delightful, fleshy, creamy, healthy mounds. Her creamy skin and flesh was quite tasty then that night. Whether it was the red wine adding flavor to them, I know not. My craving for her womanly flesh was being satisfied that night, and I didn't give a damn anymore. I was the eager beaver once again, and I was ready to satisfy all her sexual needs that night. We continued to heavily fondle each other, grabbing and pulling at each other's appendages, eagerly arousing our sinful ways. I removed my long-sleeved shirt and dropped my drawers to the floor, while she removed her trouser and baby blue panties, exposing her lightly bushy landing pad. We quickly looked up and down at each other, stealing a quick glimpse of each other's eager body. In each other's naked presence, I quickly kneeled down in front of her, and with my arms spider-like climbing up the back of her legs, I grasped at her buttocks and pulled her toward me. I began to lick and bite at her thighs as I made my way toward her warm, palpitating pubic area. I then thrashed her aroused, eager warm body onto the couch, collapsing her down onto her back, where I then quickly and effortlessly and harshly spread her legs open, exposing her gooey, dripping wet opening. With a devilish smile in her direction, I munched and devoured at her exposed orifice, while she squirmed and moaned in sincere, sinful enjoyment. I took my time eating away at her, pleasuring her in ways I know how. She moaned and squirmed in ecstasy while I munched away at both of her holes. Her legs locked around my head, jerking me back and forth, suffocating me at various intervals, while her body squirmed and rattled back and forth in delightful bliss as I ate away at that juicy, dripping good that she had to offer then that night. While eating away at her, I too have gotten very aroused. My shaft stiffened and throbbed to be sucked as well. As I kept munching away at her throbbing bushy pie, Aileen came all over my mouth and face. Her soft, gooey, solid white cream tasted bitter and sweet, with a very slight sour scent accompanying it. While I ate away at her, she moaned louder and louder, with both my hands were squeezing and pulling at her large breast as though I was holding on for dear life. I was really enjoying what I was doing to her that night, and I sensed that she too was elated about what I had done to her and given to her with my hungry mouth then. While I pulled away from her oozing snatch and catching a deep breath or two of fresh air that I needed, Aileen quickly sat up and came at me, where she launched her watering mouth toward my midsection. She quickly took my hard, warm shaft in hand and jerked him up and down several times before burying him whole into her warm, moist mouth. She was a sucking machine then. Her head rapidly bobbed up and down on me while I thrust my waist back and forth in and out of her face. At various intervals, Aileen choked while she gulped and swallowed me whole. This fiasco was getting really good, and with her hair bunched up in my hands, I tightly held her head, returning the favor, suffocating and choking her at times while she devoured me whole. After several long minutes of being swallowed, pulled, and sucked on, I exploded inside and all over Aileen's mouth, where she delightfully drank up my ruptured, creamy minion as she murmured in delicious monotone as she looked up at me with a smirk that slightly resembled that of Shinshin's smile. It was kind of weird then, seeing Shinshin's while I came all over Aileen's face and chest. Oh well, I allowed her to finish her swallowing. I remember it now, Dara. It was quite good then what Aileen had given you that night. Her blowjob was as good as the one that Tilly had given you back at the BEQ in San Diego. Damn, these dirty girls can suck a ball or two, you know. You were quite the fucking machine then, Dara. Too bad you're not like that anymore. Your illness has made you quite weak, and if you try that again, it'll kill you, I'm sure of it. So be careful, okay? The next time you put and thrust your junk in someone's filthy trunk or mouth? As I warned myself to be careful nowadays of my physical actions. After pleasuring each other orally and after catching our breaths and refilling our deflated lungs with some fresh air, we continued the sex fest. We took very short breaks to recover, and now our body covered in sweat and each other's sticky discharge, and to drown out our moaning and pleasuring sound from her neighbors and next door neighbor, Aileen turned up the volume on her stereo that was set at a random station. We didn't care what was on the station, which we could have been fucking to a clown music for all we care, and we were just simply lost in each other's lustful state then. After the rest, where shortly after we were at it again, like wild dogs, we continued to mouth each other for a short bit longer until I grasped at her waist and turned her around and bent her over on her injured reconstructive knees, being mindful and careful not to put too much pressure and strain on them. We placed the unused couch cushion under her knees and atop the concrete floor for pressure support. I was making sure that Eileen was comfortable, and I wanted her to enjoy what I was about to do to her then. I was going to give it to her rough, and I was gonna get rough with her. With her knees cushioned and supported, I leaned down behind her and once again ate away at her moist, throbbing muffin, and anus from behind, licking her up and down and sucking at her oozing cherry lips and tight circular folded entrance. And when they were ready, swollen and moist, I introduced my devilish piece and intruded into her warm, swampy territory with my hardened rod and thrust harshly inside of her. With both hands locked and my fingernail embedded into the meat of her hips and love handles, I jerked and thrust back and forth in and out of her wildly, and while Eileen moaned and pushed back with uncontrollable enjoyment, I pounded into her harder and harder from behind. She screamed at every thrust and push. I too was moaning with excitement, and the share of enjoyment from fucking each other got me off once again. With my heart shaft inside of her, in hand, I paced my thrust and inserted in and out of her anus and vagina, giving each hole similar thrusts and counts, while I often exchanged my hard meat in and out of each orifice comfortably. I thrust, and once again I came inside and all over Eileen once again. And while I drew back, white gooey liquid backflowed out of her sweet vibrating orifices. And in relief and exhaustion, I leaned on top of her and held her snugly from behind as we both collapsed supinely onto the cool, weathered, drenched, tiled floor and couch cushion. See, there it is, Dara. You see that? That's what I'm talking about. You don't even do that sort of shit anymore. You don't even have the energy to exchange whole while you're fucking someone anymore. Now you just focus on one thing and then you go with it. What a tool you have become, you sickly bastard. I know if you can focus, you'll be the same sex machine you were once there was. I'm sure of it, that you will be able to return your old self if you just focus and get healthy. So, keep the faith and keep your head up, man. Please, Dara? As I try to encourage myself. For a long while, we laid in shallow silence. One of our hands held together snugly, deeply inhaling and catching our breaths, and murmuring sweet nothing from the enjoyments of pleasuring each other. We continued to consume in the humid air that resonated from our battered, sexed-up body, while we allowed our exhausted body to regain some of its lost-use energy as we once again prepared ourselves for the next phase of this sexorama of unregrettable sex and sinful lust, of pounding into each other's body. We were both fucking machines then, and we wanted more of each other's flesh, and we were going to do things to each other that none of us had imagined before that night. You were quite the machine then, Dara. Quite good at what you do when you put your mind into it. Sucks to be you now. You need to prepare yourself for what may come in the future. You need to be better. You need to be better. Once some of her energy had returned, I rolled myself toward Eileen, to her face, and politely asked if she was up for more damage control. She giggled and humbly smiled and eagerly replied, "Yes, yes, sailor man." She then quickly sat up and dragged me from the cool floor and threw me onto the cushionless couch and laid me out, when she then once again straddled atop my midsection, and with her warm right hand cupping at my testicle and shaft, She jerked him up and down, arousing me once again, urging me on to satisfy her once again. While sitting atop of me, I could feel that her warm pubic area was steaming up against my warm, darker skin. Warm, moist sweat trickled from her, slightly scorching my thighs in the process. I knew then that she was once again wet and ready. Once my shaft swelled up and hardened, Aileen guided me into her warm orifice as she grinded. She straddled herself atop of me back and forth, riding me like a bucking horse. With the couch spring reflecting and supporting our weight beneath, Aileen pounced atop of me, leaning her upper torso backward. While moaning, she worked on me like a pile driver then. Her shoulder-length brunette hair went every which way, scattered and in bunches. It flung without control, while her bosom jerked up and down and swayed left and right as she forcibly grinded me from atop. With my hands clutched into her thighs and my neck strained from all the joyful bouncing, my body tightened and I was once again ready to unload my juice into her burning oyster. Aileen knew quite well what the hell she was doing then that night. She seemed to be really good at what she was doing. She was quite amazing then that night, and she gave me a hell of a ride. With much effort, I managed to control my boiling urges and allow Aileen to finish before I had to. And once she came, she leaned forward and rested her bosom upon my face, while her drools and sweat slowly flowed onto my forehead and face, leaving her warm, moist muffin wrapped around my burdened, overworked shaft. As I began to unload with a sharp pain and firm squirm, I wrapped my arms around her waist and relieved myself into her once again. And as I looked at her glowing face, she gently smiled with feeling my warm gooey slime flushing up into and flowing out of her battered snatch. And yet our lovemaking hasn't ended yet. Although I had unloaded and ejaculated several times already, I was up for another round of sinister, dastardly deeds. Aileen still famished from what had happened and allowed me to go about as I pleased on her. I softly asked her then once again, once I regained some of my used energy, I asked her, Aileen, how do you want me to finish? Number 1 or number 2? She giggled from my direct demand and request. Grinding her teeth and yanking my ready shaft, she smiled and uttered those soft, inviting words. Number 2. Number 2, sweet Dara. I want you to finish in me as you please. Do as you will. I want you to enjoy your time with me. Aileen then exclaimed. With that reassurance of sincere answer, I readied myself to finish what we had started. Slowly I removed myself from under her, stood up and took a quick stretch of my waist. Turning left and right, side to side, I stretched out my legs and arm and took in a few deep breaths into my collapsed lung. Aileen still laid face down on the non-cushioned couch. Her naked body glistened, all sticky and wet all over from her slobbering, dripping sex fest. I didn't bother to turn her over. I was going to finish this, and I knew where I was going with it. I was going to end this deep in her ass. Slowly I helped guide her waist up to where her knees were bent, lifting and exposing her lovely ass and rear end for my entrance. Still with her upper extremity and face to the couch and its coiled spring, I bent down onto the floor in front of her face and allowed her to take my shaft into her warm, slobbering mouth once more. I wanted her to get me really hard before I finished off our sex melee. She went at it like it was her bottle, while she eagerly helped to get me ready for this fantastic, rough ending. Once my better half was stone hard and ready, I jerked myself away from her gulping mouth and quickly moved myself to the back of her. I pranced onto the couch behind her, and with one hand holding her ass and waist upright and still, with the free hand I held my hardened shaft and directed at her anus while I spat at and onto her waiting poop hole to help with the lubrication of my angry, destructive insertion. He had now been guided atop of her target, and with both hands at her waist and love handles, I slowly pushed myself into her anus, causing her to moan in some discomfort, and deeper I penetrated into her until I was no longer able to. For a few long seconds, I left him there where he was, allowing him to suffocate inside of her while she tightened her rectum and caused him to suffocate for some relief. I too. I took in a deep breath and began to thrust harder in and out of Aileen's damaged asshole. My thrust into her shithole quickened, and I was forcing all my energy and chakra into her, thrusting and pushing in and out of her while we both screamed in painful bliss. She was once again climaxed, and I was getting to my end point as well. With the last deep breath and my last heavy thrust, my neck jerked back to a locking state, and my spine at its tightest arch. I exploded into her ass and rectum, oozing out all that I had left in much enjoyable pain. And I couldn't hold back, and I couldn't hold it back no more. And with screeching enjoyment, I screamed, "This feel fucking really good, sweet Eileen. Thank you for letting me finishing this off inside of you." I screamed. She softly giggled and commented it was a good for her as well. Once I had exploded inside of her ass, I pushed her body downward while I collapsed atop of her. Still with my deflating penis still embedded inside her rectum, both of us crashed atop the stained couch, and shallowly we breathed in what we could while we tried to catch our composure, allowing our burning bodies to cool off there, then and there, that late night. We were now finished. We lay there on the burden-soaked couch, motionless with few words accompanied with long deep breaths that echoed throughout the now silent room. We were exhausted from the enjoyable bumping, humping, grinding, and nasty-ass grinding, but happily we lay there clinging onto each other, savoring the enjoyment that we had just had. I softly and exhaustedly thanked Eileen for the experience, and she tiredly whispered, "You're welcome. You're welcome, Pocket Hercules." She giggled and told me that she had a great time with me as well, while we were fucking each other then. "Oh, that's right. You told Eileen what your nickname was and how you got that nickname from Martinez a year back or two back in San Diego." We softly giggled at various intervals while we lay there, softly thanking and telling each other how much fun we just had. The rest of the night and morning I stayed and slept over soundly with Eileen in her dormitory, both in each other's arm in her cozy twin-sized bed. The experience then that I had and shared with Eileen were a memorable time in my life. Eileen wasn't only a good friend then, but a companion that understood how I was feeling and accepted me for me, no matter how crazy or how awkward I was during these past few months in Newport. Eileen was the one thing that helped kept me sane, and I cherished those moments that we had shared together. But like all good things, it just had to end. And the relation that Eileen and I was building up to will eventually become only something from the past as well. When I received my new and final orders to leave Newport shortly after. But I won't forget Eileen for this. She was my savior then in Newport, Rhode Island. She kept me sane for a while and helped satisfy my sexual urges. I do really miss Eileen. Thank you for listening. This is the end of Chapter 71. Be on the lookout for Chapter 72, titled Transfer Without Psychiatry Permission. This is Do, Ra, me, and I'll see you later. Thank you.